right, here we are with Mr. Bill Barry, candidate for PC leader and automatically premier, of course. Welcome to the show, Mr. Barry.
Good morning, Pete. Pleasure to be here.
We just had a quick chat there while the break was happening, and I knew you were a triathlete and were as driven in terms of your exercise pursuits as you are in your business, but I had no idea that you've done as many as you have. How many triathlons have you, or you've done Ironmans as well?
I've done over 50 of the Olympic distance triathlon, which is 1.5K swim, 40K bike, 10K run. And I started doing, I did Ironman Canada in '94, and then since then I've done Ironman Germany, Ironman USA in Lake Placid, 2005, 6 and 7. I did Ironman France in Nice, Ironman Switzerland in Zurich.
And Ironmans, of course, are a much greater distance. It ends with a full marathon, for instance.
There's a 3.8K swim, 180K bike, and then a full marathon, 42K run. This is a pretty miserable day.
Indeed. That takes a lot of time. I don't know how you fit in all that training and competing in amongst all of your other activities, including the tremendous amount of business work you have. You also told me that you rode from your house to Holiday Inn here in St. John, 711 kilometers?
Yeah, I did that. I did that 5 years ago. I actually was going to bike in to do the triathlon in here, so I figured I got up one Sunday morning, took my credit card and my bike gear and got on my bike, and I just headed out, and anyway, 711 kilometers later. It took me 3 days to get in here, but my quads and my butt and everything were so sore when I got in here. I filled up the tub in the Holiday Inn with ice and cold water, and I sat in it for about half an hour, and then when I got out of it, I realized, well, I almost couldn't walk for 3 days, so I went down and cheered the crowd on at the triathlon here, because I wasn't in very good shape for about a week or so.
Bathtub full of ice. You talk about shrinkage. Okay, let's move on. So no worries about determination or energy when it comes to your performance as a politician?
No, I think I can stand the strain there.
Okay. Well, we also went from that topic quickly to the fact that perhaps in this province our troubles are not really in terms of healthcare, it's sick care. Because if we had more prevention, if we had perhaps a better lifestyle, more physical activity, maybe more attention to our diet, etc., that would solve an awful lot of the problems and the costs that we are currently incurring in healthcare.
Yeah, there's no question about that at all. You know, because people will always look towards government and they'll say, well, you know, you're not spending enough money here, you're not spending enough there. And, you know, our healthcare budget, you know, hovers roughly around $3 billion. And the reality is, if you look at the Conference Board of Canada a few years ago, 2013, they looked at the amount of money that we were spending on healthcare versus other provinces, and we spend you know, roughly $5,800 per person, and most provinces roughly are around $4,000, a little bit more, a little less. So we're spending probably 25% more, you know, than most other jurisdictions. And you know, the reality is for us, you know, when we looked at the amount of people we had in the system, when we looked at the equipment that we had, Newfoundland registered an A. But when we looked at all other things, healthy lifestyle, outcomes, how well the system operates, we actually scored a D. So we had an overall, you know, one of the worst ratings, actually the worst rating in the country, even though we spent the most money. And one of the points that was made in the study was simply that, you know, we don't eat enough vegetables, we don't exercise, our population in general terms, there's a lot of obese people, we're raising a whole generation now that by the time they're 30, a lot of people have got type 2 diabetes, and, you know, I can remember when I was, you know, if you look at the yearbooks from the 50s and the 60s, I mean, everybody was relatively fit. And that just doesn't exist anymore. So we really need to be brave enough to have a discussion about, do we want a healthcare system or a sick care system? We have a sick care system now. Yeah,
and we can't even really get into child obesity, which is rampant. It's exploding. So other places have turned this around, and it really takes, I guess, a determination by the leadership that it's going to happen and find the ways and means to do it. Some people say it needs a guru who's going to sell that message to the people. Might you be that man?
Well, in actual fact, if I was fortunate enough to get this job, I would love the task of spending 4 or 5 years to talk about healthy lifestyle, because I don't think that there's anything more important in your life than your own health. And when you look at it from a government perspective, the cost of an unhealthy society, just in terms of the cost of maintaining people that are sick, and as we age it even gets worse, but the cost of productivity and everything else is enormous. So the one key ingredient that really is most important in everybody's life is how they feel and how they interact with the rest of their common man and with society when they get up in the run of a day. And that is really about how fit you feel. It's about the diet that you consume, and these things are not secondary items. They actually should be right at the top of the agenda in our society, because they are ultimately the most important.
All right, sir. Got to bring in the way this whole thing started. Very soon after you announced your intentions to run for the leadership, Danny Williams was in the media saying that he would absolutely not support you. He said you had a letter sent to caucus members that was, in his words, insulting. He said you were talking about privatizing Nalcor, Hydro. You've responded to these things, I know, since. He said you were even, open to privatizing some aspects of our healthcare system. First of all, before you have anything more to say about that, would you say that perhaps he actually said this himself when he was premier, that when he left he had hoped, he said, I hope I have the wisdom to stay out of it. I think he was talking about Roger Grimes at the time, and not participate anymore. He has, not only in this instance but others. Should he just butt out at this, and has he tipped the scale somewhat in this right from the get-go?
Well, I think it's always legitimate for people in our society, whether it's a former premier or anybody else, to have opinions. And I think it's always okay to voice those opinions. But I believe it's the slant of Danny's message that I didn't like. Well, first of all, he mischaracterized the letter that I had sent to caucus. I didn't say in the letter that I would privatize healthcare. What I actually said in the letter, which I provided to the media, is that I thought that private enterprise and private opportunity to be involved in the energy equation would be something that I would be very interesting to see, because the competitive aspect of private versus public keeps everything more in balance and more in line, and that's really the way the whole world works. The aspect of, and I didn't make comments on privatizing healthcare or privatizing education. What I said that, we're spending so much, this is 3/5 of our budget now, that I felt we should look at all the different aspects that we have available to us, because many parts of if you look at healthcare, many parts of the healthcare system now are really quasi-private. I mean, people bill MCP, but if you look at other parts of the country, we're not even having a discussion in Newfoundland about how we can cut down waiting times. If you're in Halifax, or you're in Toronto, or you're in Vancouver, or you're in Montreal, you have access to private health care. Just recently I needed to get an MRI on my knee. I was telling you earlier on where I tore a cartilage in my knee from a skiing operation, and I couldn't get that in a timely manner, in Corner Brook. And I called Valley View Medical in Halifax, and I said, I'm flying over tomorrow I can get in at 3:20. I got a flight coming back at 6:30. Can I get an MRI in between then? They said, you get here 4:15, you can get your MRI. So I went over, paid my $835, came back on the plane with my MRI. I guess my point is, and it's not about, but my point is for me or anybody else, you might make an argument that characters like me shouldn't even be a part of the public system, because if I can afford to pay, why should I be taking up a block of somebody else? The reality is, I think government has only so much money. Government has only so much opportunity to service its citizens and look after them. And in relation to healthcare, when almost every other jurisdiction in the country now, there are legitimately parallel systems that give people opportunity to eliminate waiting times and get themselves looked after. And it's good enough for Premier Williams in Florida. It's good enough for Bill Barry to go get an MRI in Halifax. And a pile of people that I know are exercising that option in their daily lives now. But in Newfoundland, we're fixated on the thing that something public is good and something private is bad. And that's simply not the case.
Yeah, certainly in terms of diagnostics, a lot of people think it makes sense because it not only it removes people from the system, essentially, and then you have more resources to use for the people who are trying to get it through traditional routes.
Yeah, and Pete, just one comment, because I don't want people to misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm an absolute 100% believer in a public healthcare system. I believe it should be supported and maintained, but there's only so much money that government is ever going to have to be available. So why would we do something that is happening in really every other jurisdiction in North America? We're really the square peg trying to fit in a round hole. We're out of sync with the reality of how the rest of the world is moving.
Okay, now we've got tons of people lined up here. We've got questions coming in on Twitter and email. I'm going to ask one of my own, and then there's a huge list of things we could talk about. The size of the public sector, education, Muskrat Falls. I do want to talk about that a little bit later. The whistleblower legislation. I'd love to know how you feel about that, etc. But before I get into all those things, and it is a long list, I want to ask you this. You've said, and it's here in the letter that you sent to the caucus as well, there's no I in team, and that's what you've lived with and by for a long time. How would you transition from a self-determined, driven, opinionated maverick, an individual that makes his own decisions, not afraid to take chances and live with the consequences and deal with those, to a team player who governs by consensus and really listens to not only the people but other caucus members?
Well, the first thing I'd say, and if you knew the people inside the Barry Group, it's not a big transition for me, because I've always encouraged open debate in our company, and I've certainly had lots of very vigorous debate and arguments from every one of my sons and my children that are involved in the business and the other senior management. So it's not a big transition for me. But the other thing that is more important, and I'll call it, you can learn from people like Alison Redford. If you get elected, if you get chosen for this job, you are the representative of 525,000 Newfoundlanders. You have to consult. You have to share your views. You should have to share your views with people in cabinet, people in caucus. They have to share theirs with you. And nobody can run a government on their own. And when you look at people that have an arrogance about the job, when you look at people that decide to misuse the people's money, when you look at people, clearly the Premier of Alberta went down to 17% in the polls, in the party in Alberta. And they went there because of arrogance. They went there because of non-consultation. They went there because they weren't prepared to listen. So the message is clear. Anybody that gets in this task that's not prepared to listen shouldn't be there. And one of the things that I believe in, I guess what I'd call a recall. I think a party, whether it's the PCs or the Liberals or whatever, I think a premier should be at the service of the party. The best way you can determine the legitimate exchange of views in a party is, if I was premier of the province of Newfoundland and leader of the PC party, I'd put my leadership up every single year at the annual AGM. And if the people didn't think that I was representing their views well and the people in Newfoundland well, every year, boot me out. I mean, that's the way I feel about it, because that's real democracy, in my opinion. Not to get in there and hang in there and somehow, intimidate people or intimidate the process. I'm not about any of that at all. I'm about a straightforward dialogue, democracy, and everybody putting a pile of input so we make sure we make good decisions and not bad ones.
Well, it's the delegates to the convention that you're going to have to win over. You've already said you're not going to be selling yourself. You're going to be presenting yourself and your ideas to them, and they will choose you if they see fit. Frank Coleman has also said that he doesn't necessarily believe in slates as well, so you must be presumably satisfied with that. That's what you've said as well. Why don't we go to our calls, see if we can get this kicked off here. First up is Ron on line 1. How you doing, Ron?
Good morning, Mr. Barry. How are you?
Yeah, good, Ron. Morning.
And first of all, we have a little bit in common. I've been involved in fitness since I've been 28. I've instructed at the YMCA for 20 years, and I'm close to 70, and I'm still very much involved with it. And I find it great.
Yeah, good on you.
I've been out of the country for the last 4 months, so I'm a little bit behind. So please, if my facts are not right, please correct them. But I find it ever since I've been kicking around politics, I've never, ever come across at least one member of cabinet that didn't want to be premier. There's always somebody in there with the ambition that they go from cabinet to premier. It didn't happen when Danny left. Nobody stepped up to take the reign. Cathy Dunderdale was appointed, and nobody challenged. Again, I think the word was in, stay where you are. Cathy is our person. Cathy leaves. Nobody comes from the cabinet comes forward. Again, I think the fix is in, as you put it. They were told, stay where you are. You come out, you are not the chosen one. The king has come out and said he's not supporting you.
Ron, it's Pete Soucy here. We need to get other callers in. Can you get to your question?
Well, the question that I'm saying is that this party is run by Williams and his associates. And in my humble opinion, Mr. Coleman in Corner Brook is the chosen person to lead it. He'll be taking basically under the thumb of Williams and his friends. And until this goes, and until we get rid of that, nothing will change, and this place will be run only by the Williams denomination, and I think that is horribly, horribly wrong.
Okay, more of a statement than a question, but do you have a response, Mr. Barry?
Well, obviously I have similar concerns, and insofar as you're right, and these things are, I guess, a lot of objective decisions, and I've heard similar statements by people, really all over Newfoundland and Labrador. But I think I don't really think it's good to characterize the past too much. Look at the candidates that are there, and look at what I stand for. I believe that.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Look, you are not under that thumb. I admire that in very much, and if I was a supporter of the PC party, I would vote for that.
Yeah. Well, I certainly appreciate it. I believe that any candidate that's running for any party, they really should foster a relationship of all-inclusiveness. Like some of the things that bother me about when I look at the PC party, when I look at the ex-officio list, even in terms of, the voting and delegates, and like guys like somebody like former Premier Brian Peckford is not on that list. So if Peckford wanted to come here, or somebody like a Jim Morgan who served in government for 17 or 18 years, like I don't know how long-term Tories get put off a list. Because what does that say about your party? And ultimately, if somebody's going to form a government in Newfoundland, it was like when Danny was 80% in the polls, he had a pile of Liberals supporting him, and which is fine, because you really need to be open and all-inclusive, and you shouldn't be restrictive in your party. It shouldn't be anybody's.
I'm not saying that. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Mr. Williams doesn't have the right to his opinion. I don't like the hands-on and the picking and the controlling that I'm stating is there.
Okay, well, Ron, listen, we do need to go to our break. We're going to thank you for your question, and hope you listen to the rest of the show.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and we will do that. We'll get right back, folks. We are back with Mr. Bill Barry taking your questions. I am going to ask people, if they would, in the interest of getting as many on as possible, to quickly state their question or ask their question, and Mr. Barry is going to answer. We may cut you off after you ask your question just so that it doesn't become a long, extended conversation. We want to give everybody an opportunity. So right now, we're going to go to Ray on line 2. Hello, Ray.
Good morning, Mr. Barry. It's good to see that you are running for the leadership of the Conservative Party. I admire you for your tenacity of trying to move Newfoundland forward. My comments to you would be in Alberta, for example, which is an oil-producing province, as well as like Newfoundland. Newfoundland has a little over 500,000 people with 49 constituents in the House of Assembly. Meanwhile, Alberta has over 3.5 million people or a little over 80 members in the House. So that tells me that for every 11,000 people here in Newfoundland, we have a member. In Alberta, for every 44,000 people, they have a member. The correlation obviously is not the same and I feel that obviously Newfoundland is overburdened with the number of MLAs, and that money then can be spent in the health care and education of our province.
Okay, Ray, let's let Mr. Berry respond to that, and we'll move on to another caller.
Sure, not a problem.
Okay. Yeah. Well, my quick response is, and I've always said I'm going to give you straight answers. I agree with you. In general terms, I think that the number of people that we have in our province and the number of districts that we have are really an overrepresentation and an enormous cost.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Nice, concise answer. Let's go to Linda now. Hello, Linda.
Hi. Good morning. I have one thing to say. I'm worried about. Mr. Berry, are you the owner of Coleman's?
No.
I'm the owner of the Barry Group, the fishing company.
Yeah, Frank Coleman will be on at a future date, perhaps, but he's the owner of Coleman's.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I just thought, well, I was really worried. Like, I kind of like Danny Williams, but I think he rules with an iron fist, and I'm afraid. I'm wondering, would he be like sort of a ghostwriter behind Mr. Coleman if he when he's wanting to get in?
That would be a question for Mr. Coleman, I guess. Do you have a question for Mr. Berry?
Yeah, I tell you, can I just say what bothers me about politics?
Very quickly, if you could, because we have a lot of people with questions.
Well, I have this one. I think that we should have a choice to be able to pay to go to our doctor and to pay to have anything that we need done in a hospital, and we should have that choice. My dog is sick. I can go to the hospital. They'll open the door. I can pay for it, and it's done that day. But me, I have to wait for months and months down the road with problems, and I think we should have that choice. That's one thing. And I tell you one thing I'm sick of looking at real quick. Seniors, students, and women with children lined up in food banks because there's not enough money. They don't have enough money on minimum wage to survive, and it bothers me something terrible.
Okay.
To see a tin can on the counter at local stores asking a dime or a quarter for the school lunch program. Thank God we got it. But why should a child in this day and age have to go out, stand for a bus with nothing in his belly, hungry, wait to get to the school to get a lunch? That's very much disturbing my spirit.
Okay, Linda, I appreciate that. Let's let Mr. Berry respond, and we'll thank you for your question.
Well, it's a real simple response. I agree with your comments 100%.
All right, let's move along now to Wayne on line 1. Hello, Wayne.
Good morning, Pete.
How you doing?
Not bad. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Wayne.
Pete, you know who I am. You know how I feel about Bill Barry. I just got a quick question for Bill Barry, and that's to do with the raw product that's going to be shipped out of the South Coast in the form of cod. I'm just wondering how Bill feels about that. I know that he'll give us an honest and true answer, so I'll leave it to you, Bill.
You're talking about the interim situation where we'll call it this winter's fish.
This winter's fish, that's correct. Yeah, the codfish that's going to be shipped out.
Okay, well, I absolutely believe that the fishermen should have an opportunity to sell and market their fish. If there's not enough capacity, if there's not enough requirement on the island of Newfoundland, the fishermen should be allowed to export it and sell it, because they have to make a living too. But the one thing that I would encourage, we're very quickly going to start changing now from a shellfish industry back to a groundfish industry. One of the biggest challenges in the industry right now is for companies that are in this business, including the Barry Group, to get back into the groundfish game again. So we have to start investing in the newest technology, and I've seen a lot of this stuff in Iceland myself. I believe over the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, there are going to be a handful of companies in Newfoundland that are going to reinvest in becoming good groundfish companies. And when that happens, there won't be a requirement to ship product out. But in that interim period, fishermen have to be given the opportunity to make a living.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Bill, before you go, Bill, I'm not a PC. I wish I was in a position to be able to vote for you. I've negotiated against you years ago, and I certainly think you're one of the most honest individuals I ever came across in the negotiation process.
Well,
thanks, Wayne.
Yeah, I certainly. This is Wayne. Is it? Yeah. Wayne. Good morning. Well, thanks very much, and I can say the same about you, actually.
All right. I have a lot of questions for you on the CETA agreement myself, but that may have to wait until another show. A lot of people have been calling the program since that came up, and a lot of interest in it. Let's go now to Annie on line 4. Hello, Annie.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. I must say, Mr. Barry, I don't know you, but when you spoke this morning concerning healthy food and healthy lifestyles, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm a senior. Now, the comment, we have a dental program in this province, sort of a dental program for low-income people. But if you don't fit into the mold, such as myself, all I need is a cent-free dental office. That's pretty simple. Not available in this province. But like you, I too had to go to Ontario when I was in pain, pay for the dental services out of my own pocket, that if I were able to go into the dentist's office and have that done here, would cost me nothing.
Right,
add to that a plane fare. So if you get in, sir, I hope things in that respect would be better.
Mr. Barry?
Well, the only thing that I can say to you is I have really, really strong opinions about, public and private. I really believe that the two most important issues in our society are obviously education and healthcare, and I believe that we really need to get in sync with what's taking place in other jurisdictions in the world. The most important thing, what are our outcomes? What are our waiting times? How do people get looked after? And ultimately, if we're spending all the money in the world in any particular direction in terms of healthcare or education, and we're not getting the correct outcomes, we should ask ourselves the question, why? And just one further comment, because you talked about dentistry. Like, I'm a guy that believes that things like soft drinks, things like Coca-Cola, the greatest brand name company in the world, like, I don't think you should be allowed to drink this stuff till after you're 18. And then, by the way, probably not, because things like fructose in your system are more damaging than alcohol. But these are debates that we really need to have, because they're real things and they're actually killing our society.
All right, thank you very much for that. We do need to take a break. We will go, and I just want to say before we do that, a couple people on the old Twitter box insisting that when you refer to the province, you have to get in the habit of saying Newfoundland and Labrador. Thought I'd bring that in there.
Yeah, and I absolutely do, and I love Labrador, and I spend a fair amount of time fishing up there, and I've got a lot of friends certainly on the coast of Labrador, and a lot of ski friends in Labrador City, Wabash. So, and they all give me a hard time. It's just 61 years of imprinting, referring to our great province as one name. And I apologize, and I don't want to offend anybody in Labrador, because I think that this province is so fortunate that Labrador is a part of it, because it's probably the biggest part of our future.
All right, so thanks for that. We'll be right back, folks. Oh boy, we got a rockin' here now. In fact, folks, I think what we're going to do, and I don't think there will be any objection to this, we're going to extend this conversation and question answering session with Mr. Barry for another half an hour. We're going to go to 10:30, because there are so many people hoping to get on and have questions for him. Let's keep it going with Vic on line 5 right now. How you doing, Vic?
Good morning, Mr. Barry.
Morning, Vic.
My first question, which is very important to me, is our fishery in Newfoundland and Labrador. I know it's of my readings, I understand from reading by professional people pertaining to the fishery. Our fishery is still being overfished by foreign trawlers, etc. And they indicate that the federal government should take control of Flemish Cap and the nose and tail of the Grand Banks. And actually, I think they also advocate that the fishery should be managed by the federal and provincial government. Now, that's one question. So I guess what will you do in terms of preserving our fishery and trying to get the fishery back to the inshore fishermen too, because that would then rebuild our rural communities, The next question, which is equally important, is hydraulic fracturing, or they call it fracking on the West Coast. We're looking for oil there. Actually, hydraulic fracturing is very dangerous. In order to really be successful, the system needs at least 500 wells.
I'm going to ask you to hurry up and finish your question, Vic. We want some time for an answer.
Two questions. I know we have a moratorium now on fracking, but what's your position on that, Mr. Barry? Thank you.
Well, quickly, in terms of extended jurisdiction, there are issues with Canada unilaterally extending jurisdiction to the nose and tail of the bank under the law to sea. However, do I agree with extended jurisdiction? Absolutely. Do I agree with any foreign vessels fishing on the fringes of our zone that ultimately affect our fish stocks in a negative way? Absolutely not. So, I mean, the challenges are Newfoundland and Labrador has a very limited say in terms of what happens, because this is mostly federal policy. I think that if I was Premier, I would be absolutely fighting Ottawa all the way to bring more jurisdictional control over the resources around Newfoundland and Labrador into our own purview. In terms of hydraulic fracturing, when I look at the west coast of Newfoundland, which is probably one of the most beautiful pieces of real estate on the planet, I would absolutely, if I was Premier, I would absolutely never allow anything to happen that would threaten places like Groswarn, the beautiful St. George's Bay, all the spawning grounds of the fisheries that take place on the west coast of Newfoundland in the Gulf. Having said that, the jury is still out in terms of fracking with me. I've attended a few conferences on it where I've listened to people, but honestly, I'm not convinced. The issues about fracking mostly concern the frackers. As far as I'm concerned, the people that do it and the professionalism or unprofessionalism, the liabilities that company can take and actually deal with their issues after. And a lot of these companies and jurisdictions in other parts of North America, they leave messes behind. That would never ever happen on my watch. I can absolutely guarantee you. The issue in terms of the fracking fluid and things like contaminants like benzene in it, these are major concerns for me. Now, having said that, we do need to have development. We do need to develop our energy base, because we simply have to have revenue if we're going to maintain the things that are important to us, like healthcare and education and our roads and this type of thing. But the guy who's in the skipper's chair, the Premier of the province of Newfoundland, he really needs to be exceptionally careful about our island and our resources. And remember, we have $1 billion tourism industry here, so we can't throw away one thing just to get something else. So I'm maybe not giving you as clean an answer as I want to, but the jury is still out on fracking for me, but I'm extremely skeptical about it.
All right, thank you very much for that. Let's go to Keith on line 1. Hello, Keith.
Good morning.
Good morning. If you could ask your question concisely, and we'll move on to another caller. Thanks.
Sure. Going back a number of years ago, the Conservatives in Ottawa had made a promise on joint management. Mr. Barry just touched on that. I was wondering if he'd be kind enough to expand a little further on that, and if you maybe make a comment on the damage that the ABC campaign actually set. Did that set back the I guess the motions or the things that were put in place at that time. I mean, all I hear on various shows is fishermen are complaining they can't fish. They're overwhelmed by rules and regulations and so on. Our people cannot fish.
Okay. Yeah. Can we let Mr. Barry give you an answer?
Sure,
yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I think it's always good to have a good relationship with the central government. It's always good to be able to reach out. And in the past in our lives, we've always had some really strong ministers in Ottawa that would really, help out with jurisdictional issues. The fisheries profile in Newfoundland, in my view, has and will be always the most important one. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I believe that the issues that really concern the fishery here, whether it's management of our stocks, whether it's scientific assessment, whether it's how we set quota relationships between ourselves and other sister provinces, Newfoundland simply has to have a greater say in that. One thing comes to mind, the turbot quota on the west coast of Newfoundland, where we have an invasion of Quebec boats all the time that basically fish the majority of these fish, while our own fishermen basically sit there and suffer. And nobody has taken the bull by the BALLS to actually try and change this. And that is about having a good relationship with Ottawa and presenting Newfoundland's case in a aggressive yet cooperative way to get a good result for the island. Things like the closure of our Coast Guard Centre here. I think that was a terrible issue. If I was Premier at the time, I would have went bananas, because I know what it's like to be fishing fishing offshore. I've fished myself, and I know what it's like in the middle of the night in a storm of wind with 5 or 6 or 7 meter seas when you actually don't know if you're going to live or die. And to be able to at least call, know that there's somebody like a Coast Guard that can be in touch with you and that gives you a chance of living. These are major issues, and they're not political issues. They're real issues for human beings, and you need somebody at the helm in government that deals with these issues for Newfoundland and Newfoundlanders.
All right, sir. Listen, that's great note on which to take our break for the news at the top of the hour. We'll be back for another half hour with Bill Barry right after this. Stay with us. Lots to come. We are back, and welcome to our continuing discussion with Mr. Bill Barry. He's taking your questions. We touched on a few things during the break ourselves here. A little bit of conversation about Muskrat Falls, which hasn't come up yet now from our callers, but may well. I do want to ask him at some point, because we do have some questions in the form of emails about the public sector and the fact that it grew under the Williams administration considerably, and often people refer to it as a weight we cannot continue to bear. Mr. Barry, you want to say something about that before we continue with our calls?
Well, I mean, the reality is there's 500,000 of us citizens here in Newfoundland. The province has so much revenue, so much tax revenue, so much offshore royalties. We have a limited capability, and insofar as we expand beyond that limited capability, it's bad decisions of government. The expansion of our public persona underneath the last couple of administrations, in my view, has clearly been wrong. It wouldn't have been something that I would do. And ultimately, when you look at Newfoundland and Labrador and you see the number of public servants we have for every 1,000 of our people and compare it to places like Newfoundland or Nova Scotia, I mean, I'm told we have, pushing twice as many. These are our major issues, and they're not major issues if we could afford them. Like, if we had lots of cash, if we weren't, wallowing in debt and doubling our debt again with Muskrat Falls, I suppose at the end of the day we could say, well, I mean, it's just another vehicle to employ our people. But we have to look at these things in the context of what we can afford. And in terms of somebody say to me, well, Bill, how do you rationalize it? One of the biggest challenges that we have in our society is we're in demographic decline. So a lot of the issues that we have in terms of the public excess today will be dealt with over time, because through attrition, through an aging workforce, people will just flow through the system. But we have to have a plan, and we have to know where we're headed and realize and do it in relation to what our real capabilities are. How much oil revenue we're going to get, how many wells we're going to be drilling. And these things these are not happening at a fast pace in Newfoundland. We're less than 300 well drills when you got jurisdictions like Norway with less sedimentary basin than we have with 6,000 drilled. Mm-hmm. So what is it? What is it that we haven't been able to encourage more activity? Like, is there an anti-investor climate here? Like, I just wonder why our offshore drilling has progressed so slow over the last 30 years. When in a comparable jurisdiction like Norway, there's been, many tenfolds the amount, and that gives them money in the bank.
Okay, let us continue with the calls. We have Corey on line 2. Hello, sir.
Good morning, gentlemen.
How are you?
Morning.
Well, not too bad. I just want to say, I don't vote on party stance. I vote for who I feel is the best person and their character and that. So I just want to ask Mr. Barry if there's any truth to that you get rid of your people just before they get pensionable. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, I guess the short answer is no. I don't even understand where that comes from, but the short answer is no.
Okay. Let's go to William on line 4.
Good morning, Pete. How are you?
Very good, sir.
Morning to Bill.
Good morning.
Bill, a quick question. Why does Danny dislike you?
That's very difficult for me to ascertain.
Certainly not anything to do with the contributions to the party over the years, because you've been quite generous, as I understand, with your political contributions.
Yeah, no,
to the BC Party.
we've certainly always supported the Progressive Conservative Party, and obviously Maybe to some degree we're too much alike. We both have strong personalities. We both are very opinionated, and probably some of his opinions are different than mine. And insofar as my opinions are different than Danny's, or different than anyone else's for that matter, I will absolutely be completely truthful and honest with everybody. And you know, and certainly in my whole, I guess, public life, as well as any interactions that I had with Danny when he was Premier. You know, I was pretty straightforward in my opinions on things, and maybe those things have got me, I'll say in quotation marks, in trouble with him, but I mean, that's the way it is. I express my views as they really are.
Now, it wasn't always the case, because I heard some tape just recently from quite some time ago where he was quite praiseworthy. You know, he thought you were a fine fellow and had lots of great things to offer.
Yeah, no, and actually, you know, I certainly felt the same way about him. And you know, I don't want to. This is terrible that we're continuing talking about Danny Williams, because honestly, I mean, he is one of our best sons. I mean, he's a smart guy. He's worked really hard for everything that he's got. He's done a tremendous amount to this area in terms of the big land development he's got now, and certainly, you know, the whole ice cap thing here. I mean, that's all top-notch, wonderful stuff. So at that type of level, I'd have to say that I'm a big supporter of Danny Williams.
Bill, I don't think he's done this. I don't think he's done as much for rural Newfoundland as you have.
No, and to be honest with you, I would agree with that. I think the issues really are, you know, I'm a guy that has independent ideas and an independent voice, and I'm not the same type of personality as Danny. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, well, I'll let people determine that. And I really don't think that I should waste any more of the next 3 months trying to continually talk about why Danny likes me or why Danny doesn't like me, because frankly, I don't care.
Okay, Don, listen, thanks very much for your call.
Thanks, Don.
All right, I'm going to throw in a couple of quick things here we can probably get out of the way fast now before we go to another caller. Will there be leadership debates around the province?
I would absolutely hope and encourage the other candidates, both Frank and Wayne, that you know, that we make ourselves available to the news media and to public forums. Like, I think that there's nothing better than having questions come at you from the general public that can't be rehearsed, and that, because there's always somebody in the crowd that's going to come at you from left field, and people, and they will really dig out how you think. And you know, if you really want to put a premier in the premier's office that you want to know how he is, open line shows will do it, public debates will do it.
Okay, let's continue on with Con O'Brien on line 2. How you doing, Con?
Good morning, Pete. How are you this morning? Good morning, Mr. Barry.
Good morning, Con.
I just heard you saying that you had nobody ask a question about Muskrat Falls, and I've been asking a few questions about it, so I'll take the chance. You're the only man who has given me any hope whatsoever that someone will actually go have a look and see what's going on at Nalcor. Muskrat Falls, everything that is going on within the doors of Nalcor, in my opinion, and in the opinion of an awful lot of people, needs to have some deep scrutiny put on it. And my question is will you do that?
The Energy Corporations Act that was created in 2007, that created Nalcor, gave this Crown Corporation too much free will to go and do what it chose to do while having your hand in the public purse. I wouldn't let that stand for, I'm going to say 24 hours, but that's ridiculous. I wouldn't let it stand very long if I was Premier. I would certainly delve into the whole Muskrat Falls thing within the first very short time, few weeks. I would certainly select a group of a half dozen or 7 or 8 people, of the most informed people that I could find on the island of Newfoundland, to look at this whole energy issue, to look at the Muskrat Falls project. And you know what? And the biggest reason that I would do it is so that this group could give me, as the Premier, the best advice available as to where this project sits with us now, why we embarked on it, the risks we're taking on a go-forward basis, what our projected energy rates are going to be, and also the arrangements that we have with organizations like Emera in Nova Scotia. And some of these things, some of the bits and pieces that I know about it, they are distasteful for me, but the biggest distasteful thing for me is the process for Newfoundland ratepayers and Newfoundland ratepayers and Newfoundland taxpayers. The process, in my opinion, has been disgraceful, and I guess I could talk on for hours about Nalcor, but I think I have a lot of concerns about it as you do as well.
Well, I hope the rest of Newfoundland is listening loud and clear to you, because it's something that is required. There is a point of time when this will get to the point of no return, but it has not come anywhere close to that yet. And it's refreshing to hear a politician stand up and say that they would actually stand up and take a look at it. I hope that the PC party of Newfoundland, if they don't want to be disintegrated for the next couple of decades, have a real good look at you, sir. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Con.
Thanks very much.
Okay, and I presume we're going to go to a break now, but I presume you are happy with the Auditor General and other independent oversight on Nalcor and all issues within government.
Absolutely. I think that government has not used the recommendations and has not used the huge amount of good work that the Auditor General has done really every year. Because I continually read the Auditor General's reports, and when I look at them, I read them, and I wait for a reaction inside of governments over successive governments, and I really see I don't see anybody acting on the abuses that are there, which they should be. I mean, that's what your job is.
All right, sir. Thanks very much. We're going to take a quick break, folks. Get right back to some more time with Mr. Bill Barry and some time for more questions. All right, we're here. We're still chatting here in the background when the breaks are going, and I just found out that not only do Mr. Barry and Mr. Coleman know each other well, but they've spent a great deal of time in each other's kitchens, and actually Mr. Coleman is a godparent to one of your daughters.
Yes,
unbelievable.
That is correct. But I mean, Corner Brook is a small place, and there's not a lot of developed business in Corner Brook. So over the years, naturally, guys like myself and Frank had gravitate to each other, and we both had big families, and most of our kids know each other. And we went to the same high school, we went to the same university. Mm-hmm. So we've spent a lot of time talking about politics and family and I guess life in general.
Now you're both at that point in your lives where you're running at the same time for leader and premier. You both have big families too. You have 9 children. He has 7.
Correct.
Wow, amazing. Lots of questions coming in, as you can appreciate. Here's a quick one before we go to the next call, and maybe you can give this a fairly quick answer. I don't know if you can or not, but here it is. It's a bit long. 5 million cubic meters of wood being cut in the Muskrat Falls Reservoir with no plan to salvage it. Sawmills in the island closed due to log shortage. 110 million of loans to Kruger. What would Bill Barry do if he were a forester rather than a fisher?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. The traditional industries that we have in Newfoundland, unless we find a way to maintain their base, we're going to lose our population entirely. When the moratorium started in 92, we had 582,000 of us. By 2035, there's going to probably be 482,000. We'll lose 100,000 of our citizens. And, most of our citizenry has been ultimately maintained because of the distribution of work that we've had in the fishery and in the mining industry and in the forest industry. And we really need to maintain that, because as long as our whole economy is based on the mega project, what we have trained up our people really well to create these mega projects and do things like Bull Arm. But what happens when the mega project is over? People's lifestyles and their expenses have all been raised up because they're earning a lot of money. They have, big mortgages and payments on this, that, and the other thing. And then if we don't have mega projects that are back to back, then what happens? We lose all our citizens that have to go to a jurisdiction like Alberta, while the cost of living for everybody else is not in the mega project around Newfoundland gets raised up. And ultimately, when all of those young people, have to leave, to keep their incomes up so high, we end up losing our baby boom group. So if you want to maintain a good, viable economy in Newfoundland, and we want to maintain a population, because if we're successful with all the energy environment, with everything else we do, and our population disappears, and not having it disappear, it really is about our agricultural industry, our forest industry, and our fishing industry. These are really the long-term resources of Newfoundland that we have to maintain if we're going to maintain our people.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. We're going to try to squeeze in 3 more calls now in the 5 minutes or so we have remaining. Let's go to Barry on line 2 first.
Yes, good morning. How are you guys?
Very good.
Yeah, morning.
You have a question for Mr. Barry?
Yes. Well, not really a question. I'm just kind of a statement, that sort of thing.
Concise, if you could, sir, please.
It's the first-time caller, by the way, and I'm kind of nervous here. But anyway, I'm just going to say this. If Danny Williams can support Frank Coleman, why can't Earl McCurdy come on? And I'm not necessarily saying that the union support him, but why can't Earl McCurdy come on and pass his opinion on Mr. Barry? Because I mean, he is one of the biggest fish processors in this company, so he's got or in the province, I'm sorry, and he's got lots of experience in the business. So why don't he come on and do a little bit of support for him? I know he's not probably haven't got the pool that Danny Williams has, but he's got a lot of fishermen behind him. So
okay, Barry. Thanks very much for that. We're going to let Mr. Barry answer, and then we're going to move on to another caller, so I'll say good day. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I guess in general, I'd love to have Earl's support. Certainly he knows me well. There's several of our plants that are unionized by the FFAW and represented by FFAW. And if I look at our relationship with the Fishermen's Union during the last 25 years, I'd have to say it's good. But not only does Earl know me, like a lot of people inside the Fishermen's Union know me. They know me from meetings and negotiations and discussions. So I'd certainly love to be endorsed by the FFAW. I don't know if that would be palatable to endorse Progressive Conservative, but I think I'd be comfortable to stand on my record that I don't think there's too much bad they could say about me, at least since I'm an adult.
Okay, the fair response to a tricky question. Let's go to Don on line 1. Hello, Don.
Good day, sirs. How are you?
Very good.
Morning.
Hi, Mr. Barry. You probably heard about a lot of people call and complain about this workers' compensation system over the years, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering if you had pretty well with many employees over your time, and I was just wondering, did you ever have an employee that went on workers' compensation and that couldn't work, and he got hurt on working for you, and went on workers' compensation and couldn't work no more, and pretty well got put in poverty on workers' compensation? I just wondered, do you have any of your employees in that situation, and will you fix the workers' compensation system if you're elected in?
Okay, thanks, Don.
Yeah, I mean that is a great question, and I don't really know that I have a really good answer for it. For sure, with the number of employees that exist in the Barry Group in Newfoundland, I'm absolutely sure that that there are people that over the years would end up on workers' compensation, but I would hope that the system would functionally be able to deal with it, because, I mean, I think in terms of our own company, I believe the amount that we pay into workers' compensation as a company, it's certainly millions of dollars every year. So I would hope that the amounts that we pay in would certainly support and contribute to a system that actually would look after any of our people when they were hurt. And and those things unfortunately do happen in this industry, and I just hope that people don't fall through the cracks. There needs to be, people need to be looked after.
Yeah, okay, and we're not going to continue with that because we want to try to fit in a few more calls. Tony, your question is next.
Yes, Pete. How are you this morning?
Very good, sir.
How are you, Mr. Barry?
Good, Tony. Good morning.
Good morning. I was just well, I say I'm a lot of the Liberals wrote some wine supporting you. That's a bad thing for you, I'd say.
I'll take it wherever I can get it.
Yeah, but I would just want but Danny Williams. I mean, the man. When you came out and you criticised the people that worked in the Federation Building, like the PC party itself, that you wouldn't know a bucket of crap if you hauled over her head. There's a lot of smart people in there, and they've done a lot for this province. And to me, when you attack that, and you attack Danny, all the stuff that he's done, and you criticize him or criticize the party and they don't know nothing or don't know. You got to have Danny speak out. I mean, they worked with Danny.
Tony, can we make this a question so we can move on? We've got 2 more callers to try to fit in.
Okay. Well, I have a couple of questions, but I mean, for Danny, I sum it up. Then I'll ask questions. I mean, Danny, you're saying about the work you've done in rural areas. I mean, the mind that this man has created and brought in this province, and that created a lot of jobs all over this island. And you take Brown Harbour, there wouldn't be no jobs going in there only for Danny Williams.
Your question, Tony.
And yes, and the same thing with Bull Arm. So, to me, Danny has done a lot more than most business people here.
Do you have a question, Tony?
So, yes, I do. And he's well respected. So, I mean, to me, people are afraid of Danny Williams when he supports somebody because he got so much respect, not only in Newfoundland, but all over Canada.
One last chance to ask a question.
To me, if you don't like the parties or if you don't like, to me, first thing I was, why would you run for the PC party if you don't like anybody in there, or if you don't like the policies? Why would you run for them?
Thank you very much.
Okay, that's a great answer. Well, first of all, I in general terms, I do like the policies, and in general terms, I do like the people. And Danny Williams is a great businessman and a great politician, and has made a tremendous contribution to Newfoundland and Labrador. I don't necessarily agree with everything he says or everything he's done, nor do I necessarily disagree with anything that anyone has said or anyone has done. And insofar as I have an opinion on our resource base and the future of the province and the investments that we made, and my opinion is different than somebody else, I should absolutely exercise it. In terms of, making a comment in reference to government, remember, I've been in private business my entire life, and I certainly believe that, the MHAs and the ministers, people in government work really tirelessly every day to represent people, and for really not a whole lot of reward. And, I don't want people to characterize what I said as a reaction to, I guess, ultimately, in my lifetime, feeling the weight of government around me and the expansion of government around me in our whole society. And, the issue of, I am a progressive conservative. I contribute to the Progressive Conservative Party, and a guy like Danny has done a tremendous amount of good things for the island of Newfoundland. But remember, when we think about revenue, we have revenue in Newfoundland mostly because of the Atlantic Accord and mostly because of offshore royalties. And these things jurisdictionally came about because of Brian Peckford, Bill Marshall, Brian Mulroney, and Pat Carney that came down here and did a deal with us, even after the Supreme Court of Canada and the Supreme Court of Newfoundland said we didn't have jurisdictional rights in the offshore. We gave it up with the terms of union. So it was because of a couple of Tories here in Newfoundland, and John Crosby, by the way, a couple of Tories in Newfoundland, a strong-willed Tory in Ottawa, and a Tory government in Ottawa. It's the reason that we've had money the last 15 years, or we wouldn't be able to afford to turn on the lights in the Confederation building. So realize where our cash came from and who got it for us.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. We're going to try to squeeze in one. I doubt if we can get both in, but we'll try to get one more in. And asking people again, if you can ask your question very quickly and concisely, and we can get a quick answer. Daryl, you're on open line.
Good morning, guys. Bill, very quick question. Give you some time to answer it. What's your position on the parameters of whistleblower legislation? Would you implement whistleblower legislation to protect the workers that have been in the systems for 30 years and have seen different administrations and different mistakes made? And how would you support the worker to come forward and to help alleviate the problems that are in the different workplaces in the province? I'll leave you alone now.
Yeah. I certainly believe that people should be free and open to make the public aware, or make people above them aware of any issues of concern. I do have some issues of concern with whistleblower legislation, and that issue would be, I would hate to see an environment created where people were absolutely afraid of the person sitting next to him and afraid to do anything. Because, if one person unjustly gets accused, is it right that 5 people got caught doing something? You really need to be careful with this type of thing, that you don't create a whole aura of suspicion of one individual to another. But having said that, I absolutely believe that people should be encouraged in government and the lower, middle, and upper levels of government to come forward and give their opinion. But if you have an open administration where people are encouraged to voice their opinions, I don't really know that you really need whistleblower legislation. Because, at the end of the day, it's only when It's only when the system, through, things like Bill 29, or when the system tries to suffocate information, that people are worried that they shouldn't tell it like it is. I would encourage anyone connected with government to tell it like it is. And I tell you, if I get elected or if I don't get elected, I'll keep telling it like it is.
All right. And we're going to go to one last question before we say goodbye to Mr. Barry. It's Andy. How you doing, sir?
Yes, Mr. Barry.
Good morning.
Yes, this is Andy. I heard your interview with Mr. Cochran a while ago talking about promises that had to be kept.
Yeah.
How come in 2003 you made promises but you didn't live up to them? And I've tried to contact you, but you wouldn't reply to me. How come?
Which promise is that, Andy?
Promise on crab bonuses back in 2003.
Yeah.
And you didn't live up to it.
The only reference that I can make to it, and I don't remember 2003 in terms of a particular promise. As far as our company is concerned, I assume that's what you're referring to. We negotiate, for prices, and it's all done at arm's length, and there's a panel that decides that. And, everything, to my knowledge, any commitments that our company has ever been made, at least to my knowledge, have been fulfilled.
No. Your procurement officer offered a certain crab bonus, and you never did live up to it. And I've tried to contact you before, and you wouldn't reply to me. I was just wondering why.
Okay, Andy, listen, thanks for your question. We're going to let Mr. Barry have the final word on that, and then we're going to say goodbye. I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, well, I'd certainly be happy, because I wasn't really, I don't even actually know who Andy is, but I'd be happy to discuss it with him, or have some of my guys meet with him.
Okay. Well, that's going to be it. We've got tons of questions coming in all different forms. We never got to anything to do with the Senate reform, how you feel about that, the monarchy, having the lieutenant governor. A lot of people are curious about that these days. How you gain control of the bureaucracy, tourism, lots and lots of things left to discuss. CETA, again, was another thing that people had questions on, but and senior pension reform. So there's lots of subjects left we could get into. You never know, we might have another opportunity. We're going to extend this same opportunity to the other candidates, of course, in the weeks to come. But right now, I'd love to thank you for your time and give you an opportunity to finish off with anything you'd like to say as a general statement.
Well, I appreciate the station giving me the time to come in and chat, and I thank everybody for calling in. You've all been gentle with me. No, I do love this forum, and I love the answers. Not the answers. I love the ability to respond to people's real concerns. So I hope to do more of this. And I guess the only thing that I can say to the party, to Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, to the delegate selection process that's going forward. I'm going to try to meet everybody. I'm going to make myself available to discuss and give people my opinions. And I think people should end up, going to the convention with an open mind and ultimately choose or reject somebody for who they really are and what their policies really are. And if that's the basis by which I get leadership, you'll know where I'll be coming from after the fact. And if that's the basis on which I'm rejected, I can live it myself then.
Mr. Barry, thank you very much again for your time. All the best on the campaign trail, and we'll be talking again, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you.
All right.